Hello, everyone. We're here today with several certified life coaches from Oola. And we're so happy that all of you could join us here on Facebook Live. We're going to be talking today about Oola blockers. And the Oola blockers come from this book, Oola, Find Balance in an Unbalanced World by Dr. Dave Braun and Dr. Troy Amdahl. So we've assembled this group of certified Oola life coaches, and we have with us to talk about the Oola blocker of fear, Alex and Cassie Rimmer.
Yeah,
we
how's it
have
going?
Debbie Longoria that's going to talk about guilt.
Hello.
I'm going to talk about anger today. Heather Hill is going to talk about, what are you going to talk about, Heather?
Self-sabotage.
Just making sure you remember. Okay. Sheila is going to talk about laziness. And soon to join us will be Darla, my wife, who will talk about envy. And finally, Jessica Hanna is going to talk about focus or the lack thereof. All right. So let's get started. And we're going to do fear first, one of the most common Oola blockers for many people and many clients that I talk to. And to kick that off, we're going to send it to Alex and Cassie. Go right ahead.
All right. Well, thanks for having us on. When you gave us the option of kind of what blockers we could talk about, and the first two that came to my head were fear and self-sabotage. So when we're talking about fear, this is something that is really real to us because we've had to deal with it throughout our lives, and as has everyone, right? And fear to me is a lot of times that thing in your life that is kind of inwardly focused, right? It's saying what if a lot, like what if you're chasing after something and you want to go do something, fear stops you, and it says things like, what if people don't understand what I'm about to do? Or if you want to switch careers, it's what if I don't make as much money, right? It's these what ifs really get you, or what if I let somebody down, right? It's always the inward, what if I do this? What if this happens to me? Or what if people see me differently? And we just wanted to share a story of that we have gone through in our life. And that kind of is a really good illustration of what fear did to us, and then also maybe what happened on the other side of it. So
right, for me, it became really debilitating. So what happened was we had our first child 10 years ago. His name is Asher, and lots of joy came with that. But at day 2, he was born. Day 2, he failed his hearing screening, and in my heart, I just knew something wasn't right. But the doctors were like, "Oh, 9 out of 10 babies fail their hearing screenings, no problem." We go on for further testing, and he continues to fail all of his hearing screenings to the point where, we're starting to talk about hearing aids and what's next. And I had so much fear, first time mom, fear of like sleeping, eating, pooping, like,
right. Because think about it. When your baby's sleeping, it's like, you're fearful that they're not sleeping enough.
Right.
You're fearful when they sleep too much. Right. And all of a sudden you feel like a terrible parent, like I'm doing this wrong. And you're fearful of all the things you're doing wrong. Right.
Right. For sure. So then we have all of this other whole world that we're kind of bringing into all of this. We're talking about like, well, what's next? What does every day look like for us? How my baby can't hear me say I love him. My baby can't hear my voice. Like all of these other fears that came with this, and really it held me up in life, and it kind of stole some joy away. And I just kind of protected and sheltered and like hovered over my baby because I didn't know what else to do. And I was so fearful of everything else. What if he was, what if there were other disabilities that we don't know about? What if he never really truly will hear me say, I love you? And things just kept getting worse. His hearing loss did, to the point where we were probably going to need to do surgery and do cochlear implants. And I am a prayer, and I prayed every single day, like, Lord, let him hear, let him hear. And nothing was getting better, and I was getting so confused, and the fear was just building. And then I went to Bible study, and a woman was there, and she had a story herself. It was quite remarkable. Her daughter had brain cancer, and her daughter is now blind because of the brain cancer. And when I showed Asher to her and I said he has hearing loss, she was like, what a blessing. And I was like, excuse me? Like, what? Like, this is really odd, right? And she's like, and then she realized that I was maybe really taken back because
the look on her face didn't say, I agree with you. Basically.
Right? I was like, get away. Stop touching my baby. What are you talking about? And she was like, this means that you said it better. You explain it. How?
Well, basically what she was saying is that God has chosen you as parents to be part of this miracle. Right, that what we see, what we're fearful of at his hearing loss, that he's not going to be quote unquote a normal child, right? He might get made fun of as he gets older. These things might happen to him. These are these what ifs, right? What if this happens? What if that happens? But what we weren't seeing was the other side of fear. We could only see how it was going to affect us and how it was going to affect him. We couldn't see the other side of fear, which is trust. Right, to trust that is not, when I said before, what if people don't understand my decisions? Trust is how many people will I inspire by doing what I'm going to do, right? Instead of saying, what if I don't make enough money? By trust is kind of looking outward. It's what I'm gonna let myself down. Like you're so not worried about letting yourself down. You're more worried when you're trusting about how you're going to inspire other people and help them achieve their dreams, instead of being so inwardly focused. Tend to be more outwardly focused when you trust. So when we started trusting in this story, we saw that God had chosen us, and this person helped us realize that there was a miracle about to happen in our lives, and that we got to have a front row seat for that, and fear no longer had a hold on us.
No. So in return, my prayers had been answered. I'd been praying for my son to hear me say, I love you, I love him. And his hearing loss just kept getting worse and worse and worse and worse, to the point where hearing aids weren't helping. So we needed cochlear implants. Well, cochlear implants have given our child the ability to hear. It's given him a totally different life. And it has been an answer to my prayers. It's been a huge blessing. And now, something that I'm so proud of, he's 10, in second grade. He had to write a little paper about what he's proud of, what's one thing that makes him him and unique. And he's so proud of his cochlear implants. He's so proud that he has this and he can use it. He's not fearful of it. He doesn't, and that's because of our perspective changed, and we were able to kind of pour that into him a little bit.
And one thing that he has that none of us have is, how many of you wish when your parents were yelling at you that you could just take your CI off your head and not have to listen to your parents?
That's really annoying.
But we're like, we just wish he could hear our voice, and he's just like, I just can't wait to not hear your voice, right? So it's been really cool to see how a situation where we had ultimate fear as parents, fear for how our lives were going to change, what does this mean for us, but also fear for what does the rest of his life look like, and how flipping that around and having a perspective change through somebody who's gone through a similar situation, who's conquered that fear already and had been on the other side of it, now having complete trust. I mean, we had to, as parents, sit at the bedside table after surgery, where they literally would put holes in our son's skull to put these cochlear implant devices in his brain. I mean, talk about fear as a parent. This is your first child. And to have that fear of all the surgery and all the things that could happen, those what ifs, but instead to have the opposite, which is complete trust, to know that that this is going to be so amazing when everything's said and done, and to see what he's accomplished and what he's going to accomplish, and the story that he will be able to tell, and to let people know that fear is just what we're talking about. It's a blocker, and as soon as you get past it, it's so much better on the other side.
For sure. Yep.
Okay, thanks, Alex and Cassie. Darla has joined us. Hi, Darla.
Hello.
Hi, Darla.
Hi.
So glad to have you today. All right, so fear, definitely. That's a great story. Thanks for sharing that, Alex and Cassie. So sometimes when we give into fear, we may actually experience feelings of guilt because of that. So let's ask Debbie about feelings of guilt and how she's learned to deal with those.
Yeah, guilt was a good one for me. I'm glad that you guys chose that for me. anyway, guilt. I'm going to take a couple of quotes from the framework of Oola. And guilt can be your favorite excuse, which I think a lot of people use, and it can even affect your health. There's a lot of things when it comes to guilt. People can give guilt trips. You can feel guilty about not being a good parent. You can feel guilty about not being a good spouse, good daughter. There's so many things here, but there's one part of this that I wanted to read to you, that sometimes what's worse is feeling guilt for something that was never your fault. Mm-hmm. And that's a huge burden to carry, because there are things that, if it is your fault, you take accountability and you rectify it, correct? But if you're living a life where you're feeling guilty, like in this case that they share with us, if you were sexually abused as a child, or your parents got divorced as a teenager, when you were a teenager, or you've been physically or emotionally abused by someone, or an accident has happened, something that simply just is not your fault, but yet you carry this burden that we call guilt. And intellectually, we know that we had nothing to do with that and it wasn't our fault, but yet somehow we try to make it our fault. So this ties in really perfectly for my story, because anytime when I first started studying the Oola blockers, I went and found out what the actual definition of the word was. And so the definition I found for guilt is being responsible or regretful for a perceived offense, real or imaginary. And who's guilty of that? All of us are guilty of. We have enough in our life. We don't need to add more to it, right? And it can also be part of the grief reaction, which leads me to my Oola story. In 2018, I got to meet Sheila. A bunch of us went to Oolapalooza in 2018. And we all, we go through the Oola blockers, we go through everything. And I'd gone there, I knew what was going to happen. I'd been warned, I got all this info, and I was doing great, doing everything I needed to do to get my Oola life in those 2 days. And then they come up with Oola blockers. And I was fine till they hit guilt. In 2000, well, not 2000, in 1987, my daughter was hit by a car. And I did not realize until that moment that I had been carrying guilt all those years, because I kept thinking it was my fault. I didn't teach her to cross the street the right way, or I should have watched her. We'd just gotten home from church. She went outside to play with her friends and her brother. And in 15 minutes, she was hit by a car. So from 1987 to 2018, I figured out I felt guilty for it. None of it was my responsibility. None of it was my fault, yet again, it's another child story like Alex and Cassie's, because when it hits your child, she's 42 now, she's still with us, thank God. But that type of guilt is so deep that you bury it, and you bury it, and you bury it, and then it takes something like a Oola blocker at this crazy place called Oolapalooza that just brings back all this stuff that I had been pushing down for over 20 years, because I was more comfortable with that. I was much, much, much more comfortable with that. When you live a life of guilt, it can make you physically ill. It can keep you from doing things that you have the potential for, because you go, I can't. Because for me, it turned into, how do I say this? Indirectly making me feel I had to be more responsible for her than I did. She is a huge responsibility and a priority in my life. She is also my purpose. And that's where I focus now, that this is my purpose, to help other parents understand that you can get through this. Nothing is ever fun in these situations. You guys, all of you are parents. It's never fun when you're with your child, but when your child is an adult and you're doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, and you realize that I'm not going to feel bad about this anymore. She's not supposed to be here, medically speaking, and she is. That's a purpose. That's a gift. And that turns into more of an Oola accelerator, not an Oola blocker. So when they said it can be part of the grief reaction in the definition, of course, I wrote it down on a 3x5 card. When I realized that it could be part of the grief reaction, that's what happens. There's several stages of grief. And just because this accident happened in 1987, I never allowed myself to grieve. I've had different versions of the same girl. She's still my daughter. And so I think that's where guilt, when I watched people fall apart in the hospitals, families fall apart, where the mom would feel guilty because she was driving the car that got hit, or the dad was feeling guilty because he's the one that took the child fishing on the boat and something happened. Whoever was with them carried that guilt, and lives were destroyed. And through the Oola process, I have found out that it can grow. It can grow. Turn that thing into a force of nature. And then when you get up, you go, I have a miracle. I have this. I'm going to do this. And I'm not going to feel guilty about it anymore, because it's nothing I could have ever possibly done would have protected her from that one moment. And that one moment determined the destiny of my life, my son's life. My son is a military medic. He never would have even thought of being a medic had it not gone through all that stuff with his sister. And it amazes me all the good things that came out of this thing. But the guilt that I didn't even know I had until Oolapalooza 2018. And I thought, boy, Debbie, you're a great actress. And that's true. That's true. A lot of these Oola blockers should be chalked up to acting. We're acting and we're pretending and we're not feeling the things that we need to feel in order to trust the process and to become the best version of ourselves. So, and then ending on this will be a little bit lighter note, if there can be a lighter note on this. Who's ever suffered from being guilt tripped by somebody? The all-encompassing guilt trip. And I think I seem to hear that more now, sometimes from grandchildren. Grandma, you never, but mostly I hear it from my 84-year-old mother, who says, I never see you, and things like that. And we know that that's not productive, but at the same time, that is a different version of guilt when somebody guilts you into doing something. But be thoughtful and be gracious about it, because some of us, tomorrow's never promised. So sometimes that guilt trip comes from a place of love. So that's my story on guilt.
Oh, Debbie, thank you so much for sharing that personal story, and Alex and Cassie as well. My personal story is about anger, and anger is definitely an Oola blocker. It can block you from achieving the dreams that you want to achieve. Everyday frustrations happen to us, and we get to choose what we do with those frustrations. We can let them dissipate, or we can sometimes let them turn into fury and anger. And that's an unfortunate thing. When I was a child, I was actually told that I was just like my father, who had a short temper. As a matter of fact, it was further explained that every man in his family had a short temper. And so as a very young child, I thought, my goodness, I guess it's inevitable. I'm going to have this short temper all of my life. My mother decided, no, you're not going to have that all your life. I'm going to get it out of you somehow. And she tried several techniques. She never really cured me of the anger, but sooner or later, I learned to avoid the punishment. And avoiding the punishment meant squelching that frustration and that anger down. As I grew up into a young adult, my father actually changed careers and became a minister. And so what I found with his career change was now there was new pressure on me, the preacher's kid, to not let anyone be asking, what would the other church members think? Oh my goodness. So that pressure further forced my feelings to be pushed down deep inside my soul. Finally, after college, I fell in love and I got married. And I thought, finally, I'll be able to share my feelings with my spouse. And I was able to share feelings of love. But when it came to sharing things about disagreements that we didn't agree on, well, life was not good. Unfortunately, we both had expectations of each other. And I think we both thought we're going to change the other person. Well, that never happened. And those expectations remained unmet. So after 18 years of arguments and trying to get along, but finding that that anger was just going to have to be released, it finally came to a head, and I was up to here. We got a divorce. And over the next 3 years of divorce court and custody battles, and as I started therapy for myself, I would sometimes release my anger in ways that were inappropriate. And as I continued to work on that, I found that there were certain triggers that would cause that. So with therapy, I learned that I had to accept that there was a problem. And it was my problem. I had to deal with it. And these triggers that were causing my anger were a lot of times the personal expectations that I had of how other people should feel. And I found out that I don't control how other people feel. They get to do that themselves. I also found that my feelings of powerlessness were being released as anger, because when I released that, I felt powerful. I was no longer squelching my feelings. I was letting them out. But neither one of these extremes were the right way to release my frustration. So, what are some methods that I learned in therapy? Well, you can actually use deep breathing. And I still do this to this day. I found that 7 deep breaths, takes about a minute for me, allows me to consider and think about, okay, what is really causing me to be angry right now? A lot of times it's not what little thing just happened, but maybe it's something else that happened earlier that day, and it's just kind of stacked up on me. So taking those deep breaths and then releasing each of those releases the tension. I've also found that exercise helps me to release the extra adrenaline that comes from frustration. And so I do that every day as a result. So one of the biggest things that helped me, though, was actually seeking a deeper relationship with God and trying to live my life more like Jesus would. When I try and examine my life and the things that are making me frustrated from their view, I can easily see that these things are probably not even important enough to be angry or frustrated about. So I certainly don't claim to be perfect, and I don't blame my parents or my former wife or anyone else for the mistakes that I made and how I released my anger in inappropriate ways. That's all on me. And I continue to work on that. But I have found that releasing that tension and setting a positive intention can certainly help. So even though frustration may be a normal response, we don't have to let it turn into anger, which can rule our hearts and our minds. And I urge any of you that are listening to not let that happen to you either. Okay, so our next presenter is Heather Hill, and she's going to talk to us about self-sabotage. Take it away, Heather.
Thanks, Kevin. So this is going to sound maybe a little bit strange, but I'm always glad to chat about self-sabotage with people because it's been one of my biggest blockers in the past, and I still occasionally really battle with it. So I always like to share with others who might be struggling with that some ways that I overcame it a bit. So the key to overcoming self-sabotage, though, is remembering that you were created for greatness and a purpose. And until you fully believe that and embrace it, you might continue to struggle with self-sabotage. How you view yourself and your purpose and your connection to a higher power all are crucial to you having your Oola life. So we've heard about fear and guilt and anger so far, and self-sabotage is not an emotion like any of those, but it's very similar to those in that it's a battle that takes place in your mind. It's probably the most subconscious blocker of all of them. And it goes really deep. I mean, it's like the silent killer of Oola in your life. You can be working along, pursuing your dream life, building your business, working on your family life. And just when you start to see some rewards to all your hard work, just kind of out there on the horizon, that negative talk from your inner voice just starts up and you decide, oh yeah, I'm not really worthy of all this. I don't deserve it. I was crazy to even think I could do it. And just like that, you've self-sabotaged all your progress. So we all have that inner voice, and your inner voice has been programmed over years. And if it has been telling you negative things often enough, you'll start to really believe those things. They become limiting beliefs that block you from doing what you need to do, which is reach your goals. So first, we need to understand that self-talk, even though you think it's your voice, like, it can lie to you. You might be thinking that, no, this is my inner voice. These are things I know about myself, but they're not. They're not true. And these are the things that maybe like a teacher or a parent, sibling, a friend maybe even has said to you, and you took that information in and stored it. And or maybe you tried to do something before and it didn't go well, not because of anything that you did or didn't do, it just didn't work out. But you took that failure and you overanalyzed it until you decided that it was all your fault, that it failed, and there's just no way that you could ever be successful in anything else. And over time, hearing those negative things over and over, with all that negative thought building up to even just more and more negativity, you start to believe them deep inside your subconscious. And once you've realized that these things are running over and over through your head and that they're having a negative effect in your life, you need to identify what the source of that source of that negativity is. Like, when is the first time that you remember feeling or being told that you were not good enough? Was it a person that told you something? Was there something that you wanted to do and it just didn't work out? When exactly did you start feeling unworthy? Because at some point you learned to talk yourself out of all the things you wanted to do based on those beliefs. And they're now a part of your inner conversation. But the good news is that you learned that behavior, and anything learned can be unlearned. You can change a habit into a better habit. So it's time for you to, once you realize it, it's time for you to reprogram that inner voice. You are truly, trust me, you are truly worthy of having a wonderful, happy, fulfilled life. We all are. You need to stop telling yourself that you're anything less than worthy. And so then the next step would be, you have to take steps necessary to boost your self-worth. And just start by praising yourself and use daily affirmations to reaffirm the great things that you know about yourself. Talk to yourself with love and appreciation, and for everything that you've done. Remember that you are amazing. So years ago, someone shared an exercise with me, and I want to share it with you. And you may have already heard this. Several people have already heard of this, but it's just a common suggestion for people who struggle with low self-esteem or self-sabotage, because it works. So you find a picture of yourself from when you were younger, like 5, 6, 7 years old, or if you were able to pinpoint that time in your life when you started struggling with feelings of self-worth, use a picture from around that age. And take that picture and just really look at it. Notice things about that child, that person in the picture, the eyes, the smile, or maybe no smile, and really look at that child. And then look at that picture and say the things that you tell yourself to that child in that picture. Things like, you're not worthy, or you're too fat, or you're never going to be successful, you're a failure, you should just settle for what you have, your friends don't really like you, all of that. I mean, how do you think that feels to say that to a child? I mean, I did that, and I couldn't even say those things to that child, because of course no child deserves to be spoken that way. And here's the thing you have to remember is that child in that picture is still inside of you, still hurting, still needing encouragement, still wanting to be loved, still wanting to feel worthy. So take care of that child that's inside of you. We heard things enough times that we started repeating them and believing them. And that is the voice of self-sabotage. So let's change that voice and change those words, talk love and beauty and uplifting things to ourselves. Sometimes it sounds silly when you're staring at a mirror and you're trying to say those things to yourself. Trust me, I've gone into laughing fits more times than I care to discuss, but it's self-love, it's self-care and affirmation, and you are deserving of all of that. All of us need to just celebrate ourselves daily. There's, talk about laughing. I laughed really hard when I read this. There's a meme or, I don't know, some kind of quote that's floating around social media, and it says something like, even if all you did today was to get out of bed, I'm proud of you. I mean, seriously, celebrate all the little things. Like some days, that's all you need. So say nice things to yourself every day. And when others see you treating yourself better and being happier than you've been before, they'll start to show you that same kind of treatment and love. So I mentioned earlier that I've struggled with self-sabotage, and to be honest, I almost backed out of doing this today. I really thought, I can't. These are amazing certified OolaLife coaches, and I'm not worthy of being on the screen with them. So I had to do a little bit of affirmations earlier today, but I've had that inner voice repeating things to me as a child and as a teenager, and those thoughts became debilitating, limiting beliefs for me. And it has taken me years to get to a place where I can say, okay, I can be in this group of people, or I can do the things that I want to do, and I can have my dreams. I had to really do some work to be able to praise myself and have confidence in myself and to love myself. I did the exercise with my, the photo from my childhood. It was hard to even look at that little girl, let alone, even think about saying terrible things to her when I knew what she had already survived even at that age. And I knew that I had to be loving to that little girl. And that's when I realized that it was time to heal, and I was worthy of being loved, and I had to be the one to start doing that. It's been a journey for sure, but I wouldn't go back for anything. And I'm living proof that it can be done. So it's completely possible to overcome those inner struggles and to stop the blocker of self-sabotage. First, remember just that inner voice lies to you. So don't believe those things that are being said, those negative things. And then identify the source of your self-sabotage. That's really important as well. Learn where that came from, and then you can address that. And then take the steps necessary to boost your self-worth. And always remember that you are made for greatness and a purpose. Do not settle for ordinary when extraordinary is within you. You might not be there yet, but you can get there. And where you are right now is only where you are right now. It's not where you need to stay. We all deserve that Oola life.
Thank you, Heather. We would have all been much worse off if we hadn't got to hear you talk about self-sabotage today.
Thank you.
So thank you for sharing your personal story.
Thanks.
So similar to self-sabotage, laziness is a blocker that can just stop you cold in your tracks and stop your progress. So to tell us about laziness, Sheila is going to explain how she refuses to let laziness stop her. Go right ahead, Sheila.
Thank you, Kevin, for having us all on here, by the way. And Heather, that was amazing. That is my biggest blocker, like by far. I just wanted to read Michael Baboni's comment because it speaks so loudly. He said, we need a lot more positivity to overcome all the negativity we've experienced. And I feel like we just need to pour in positivity to people right now, because that is so much of what is lacking right now in this world. So Sheila from Chicago, talking about laziness. And so you're looking at the true procrastinator right here. I wake up, I look at the clock and decide that I can sleep just a few more minutes. My snoozing seems to rapidly accelerate the numbers on my clock. I wake up too late and I miss my opportunity to have my miracle morning, the time where I should normally, I would normally read for a bit, pray for a bit, and write in my journal. To be honest, it's been over a month since I've had a true miracle morning. I had a really nice routine going during COVID when I wasn't working, when we had the lockdown, and now that work has picked up again, It seems that my squirrel brain has resurfaced as well, and I find a million excuses why I don't have to do something right now. And during that moment when I'm making excuses, I lose the opportunity to get anything done. So taking the time to start my day early and on time with urgency and purpose is my Achilles heel. Like, I am just not a morning person. I'm not. I need to warm up to the day. It feels cozier to me that way. The problem is the world doesn't operate on cozy time, except on the weekends. My kids need to get up. My dog needs to go out. My clients need me to be on time. Breakfast needs to be prepared and eaten. And frankly, how I start my day dictates the tone for the rest of the day. So if I start out the morning at a frenetic pace, it makes the rest of the day difficult to maintain. So what was seeming cozy initially quickly turns to disorganized and friendly. So how does it look to show up to work late or underprepared, or getting your kids to school late before COVID, or without a lunch because you didn't have time to make lunch? How does it feel to be at a stoplight after stoplight as you tensely grip the steering wheel? What does this do to the cortisol in your brain? And add to that you missed breakfast and you put your adrenals in fight or flight mode. So the extra snooze has arrested all the possibilities of a smooth, seamless morning. So in the Oola world, we have a balanced life in an unbalanced world. We face our blockers through this ready, set, go process where you identify the blocker and what your life will look like if you continue in that pattern, or what it could look like if you change it and seal the deal with an affirmation and an action step. So just like Debbie, in 2018, I was looking at my Oola journal last night, and I wrote in the laziness page, I wrote, wake up by 6:15 a.m. in my journal in the laziness section. And the thing about blockers is that they don't disappear forever. Like, they creep up back on you in your weakest moments. COVID was an unexpected curveball for all of us, but that's not an excuse to fall back into old habits. So one thing that helps me stay accountable for waking up early is keeping a 3x5 note card next to my bed each night with my action steps for the following day. Thank you. I have mine, but six spots, so it's upstairs in my room. Thanks, Kevin. Next to my bed each night with my action steps for the following day, and then taking a moment to visualize the order of the first few action steps before I go to bed. So when I wake up and I want to snooze for a few more minutes, I visualize those action steps actually fading and disappearing, and imagine how that would make me feel to not hit that goal. So I visualize the disappointment of a client as I show up late. I visualize the feeling of getting into the car without having had enough time to hydrate and have my morning tea. I don't want to sleep more than I want to have those feelings. Don't want to sleep more than I want to have those feelings. So that usually switches my brain to take action and do one small thing to greet the day. So even a sip of water from my water bottle or reading a few pages from the book next to my bed wakes me up, and it just like snaps me out of my brain fog. Or filling my diffuser with some peppermint oil and lemon oil and just staying off my smartphone. The smartphone is a whole nother topic, but let me just say that there is no such thing as like just checking your Facebook or like just checking your Instagram, and checking emails. Just, it feels like a bottomless pit. It's like a hypnotic experience. So 20 minutes after picking up my phone, I can't even remember why I picked it up in the first place. So this is just as bad as snoozing, and maybe even worse, because the blue light from that phone, it causes the cortisol levels to actually rise in your brain, and that does not sound very relaxing. So here's what I'm recommending to all of you out there who suffer from laziness and procrastination, especially in the morning. So these are three things. So the first thing is I set a goal. Set a goal for your wake time, but be realistic. So if you're kind of snoozing and getting up around 8, getting up at 6 o'clock in the morning is probably not realistic, but maybe start with 7:45, and then gradually, after you have some success with that, reduce the time in 15-minute increments until you reach your goal time. The next is to keep distractions away from your bed. So a perfect example would be the smartphone. But do keep the 3x5 card next to your bed with your goals for the next day, a book you're currently reading, and maybe just like your water bottle or glass water for hydration. And then the third thing is just have like a set routine for the first 30 to 60 minutes of your day. So that regularity, like that you're just hitting, you don't even have to get up and think, like, this is my routine for the first 30 minutes or 60 minutes, depending on how much time you have. Those routines will build consistency, and eventually they'll establish a level of confidence in how you start your day. So before you know it, you're going to be on time. You might even be early and have a rush of energy mid-morning from being accountable for an earlier wake time, and you'll start to feel time actually stretch instead of shrink as you carry on with your day. So this will also set a really good example for your kids and your teens, who will start to model your behavior. Well, one can dream.
Sooner or later.
I just want to say thank you, Kevin, for letting me have the opportunity to share this Oola blocker with you and how I use the Oola process to create more balance in my day. I'm really excited to kick off International Oola Day with all of you guys tomorrow, and I look forward to all the surprises from Oola this week.
Thank you very much, Sheila. And we thank you for sharing your story about laziness. I know the morning routine, I have to establish that routine and keep that card by my bed also to keep me going, and that really helps. So thanks for sharing all that. Now, our next blocker is envy. And envy can sometimes be subtle, kind of creeps up on us, and it tends to derail us from what we should be doing. Now, I can tell you that Darla McCamey doesn't have an envious bone in her body, at least not that I've ever seen. But because it was the last one available, she agreed to talk about it today. So we'll let her do that now. Go ahead, Darla.
Thanks, Kevin. Probably true. So I will talk about envy because a lot of people do struggle with it. And what I remember growing up is a phrase called keeping up with the Joneses. Did you guys ever hear that when you were growing up, as keeping up with the Joneses? I'm like, what does that mean? This day and age, it could mean that the Joneses live down the street in your neighborhood and they got a new car and you were perfectly fine with your car. And then they got a new car and wow, that looks bright and shiny over there. Maybe I think I should go get a new car. Or they got a new trampoline and now I think, oh, our kids, we should probably have a trampoline, right? And so keeping up with the Joneses means status quo, keeping the status quo and having what other people have. And it may not have been in your budget or in your thought process at all, but that bright and shiny over there and wanting to have that status the same as other people might be something that could lead into this envious category. So the difference, it's totally natural to be jealous. And on social media, you'll see if somebody posts that they went on vacation or they got a new car or they got a new outfit or something, you could say that someone puts on there, oh, I'm so jelly, right? They use that little term, and that's like a sweet compliment, like, oh man, that's cool, I want that too, and that's really fine. And that's a natural thing that is just a little bit of jealousy, which is okay, a little bit, you guys. But what the difference between jealousy and envy is that you want a new car now, but you don't want anybody else to have a new car. Like you want a new puppy, but you don't want anybody else to have a new puppy. You want that new bag, but you don't think she should have that new bag. That kind of jealousy turned to envy is pretty detrimental. It's simply not healthy to be able to think that way. And social media now, I thought social media would be great to be able to connect more people and share more stories and have more wonderfulness and connection in the world. And what happened lately with social media is people tend to only put their happiness out there on social media, right? They only put their new car. They only put their happy family having a lovely picnic or a lovely dinner together. They only put their happiness out there on social media, which is really fun. We like to see that. But what is behind the scenes of what's really happening in their life may not be shown out there. So then other people are envious of, I want a family, I want a relationship like that, I want something that that family is having, because my life is full of crazy kids and, you know, a husband that and I argue or something like that. And look at that family, they're perfect, they have it all together, right? But really, I think none of our families are perfect or like that. So we're perfectly imperfect, right? So, but social media tends to kind of stir the pot, if you will, with jealousy and envy for some people. So be careful and go back to the self-sabotage, that some of these blockers just start interfering and integrating together. And so self-sabotage can lead to that thinking I'm not good enough or that sort of thing. So be careful there. One of the books, there's 3 Oola books, and I don't have one with me, so one of you guys can hold up. But I got this story from the Oola for Christians book. Thank you. A lovely lady named Ashley Downs wrote a story called Frontline Mom. She is a wonderful military mom. So her husband went out to be deployed, and she was home with the kids. Well, she ends up being a single mom at that point, right? Because he's gone for 9 to 18 months at times. And some of you from military backgrounds or families will know that. And it's tough. And so whenever I see a mom that is a military mom, I'm just like, oh, thank you for your service, because it's a really hard thing for having your husband be so far away. And it could be your wife and it could be the other way around. But this story is for her husband is gone. And so she sees these other families that the husband helps with the kids. And she has she starts becoming very envious of these other families that she's around that have a 2 people in the family that can really care for the kids. And then when her husband comes home from being deployed, she's so happy to see him. But at the same time, he starts telling her about his travels and the things he got to see and the food he got to taste and the cultures he got to embrace. And she wants so much to be happy for him, but then she's almost envious that she was, if you will, home with the kids and home with her single mom life and not even being able to get out in the world and travel. And so it just starts stirring up and being this envious type of relationship, and regret and envy and all of that just kind of builds, and it can really damage relationships. So finally she got some support, and she was encouraged to talk to her husband about it. And so when he learned what she was feeling, he just let it out too. And he was so authentic with her and compassionate with her. And he said, really, I'm away from you and I have other people with me, but I'm across the world. And what I really, really would love to do is put my kids to bed and read them a bedtime story. And for him, he was just as envious of what she was getting to do and he wasn't able to do. And so they ended up being more intimate and more together after they shared their feelings and were authentic with each other. So sometimes when somebody's envious, it's something a little deeper, and it just needs to be able to have an outlet to share that and to be honest with someone and tell them like what is going on here, because a lot of times life isn't greener on the other side, right? There's fertilizer that's involved with that kind of stuff. So when you see the difference there between jealousy and envy and how it can just build and start tearing down in your own soul and in your relationships with other people, you have to really be ready to recognize that and know that that's going on so that you can catch it and be authentic and share your feelings. The other thing is to be able to be grateful, excuse me, and be grateful and write down all the wonderfulness that is going on in your life that you are grateful for, and that the things that you do have and the things that you do want. And if there are things you want that other people have, the comparison trap is really can be devastating to you. And that's where some people really have struggles with blue moods, because they're comparing themselves, and it goes back to self-sabotage too. Well, she got that and I don't have it, and we've both been doing this thing and hers is great, mine's not, or whatever. And so be careful with that comparison trap. Like Heather said, you were made for greatness and a purpose. And I believe that God made you perfectly and wonderfully, and you have everything you need to do to follow your dreams that are in your heart. So you just have to make those steps. And we all do action steps every day towards our dreams and goals so that we can achieve them sometime. And yeah, there's some blocks that get in the way. But when you're authentic and you share your feelings with others and you take steps towards your dreams and you're grateful for even the hard stuff, like your husband being away and being deployed and being a single mom, you got to be grateful and make a gratitude journal. And we'll go into accelerators on another day, but the gratitude here really helps to offset that envy or that jealousy. So yes, we have journals at Oola. We have 3 different books that you can get, and they all have great stories in them. So we would love to have you guys post your stories and tell us your different stories or how you've overcome something in your life that happened too. So thanks again for having me on this call, and sharing all of your stories are amazing. So thank you. It's good to see all of you guys too.
Thank you so much, Darla, for taking the time to share with us. I know you're at work and you'll have to go back to work pretty soon. So appreciate you sharing with us. All right, our final blocker for today is focus. Now, focus is really a good thing, but the lack of focus, or maybe a misdirected focus, can be a terrible thing, and it can distract us from our dreams. So Jessica Hanna is going to provide us some ideas on how to deal with lack of focus or misdirected focus. Take it away, Jessica.
Okay, thank you. Hi, I'm Jess. So yeah, like Kevin said, I'm going to talk about the Oola blocker, lack of focus. So a lot of us have these dreams and these goals. Sometimes we have more than one, or an idea of how life is going to be. And so we become a flashlight, as they say, instead of a laser beam, which means that our focus can be everywhere. And especially like in today's world, there's opportunities to be distracted by anything, whether it's Pinterest, Facebook, maybe, your phone, watching games, that Netflix, oh my goodness, like all the shows, right? Like, so these things are going to keep you from focusing on your larger goals and the life that you want. So what we need to do is we need to think about what our life's going to look like if we, put down the phone or shut off the TV, anything that's going to bring us closer. What is our life going to look like if we stop and just focus on what we need to do? And then also we have what we call like the Oola A-bomb, and that's misdirected focus. And this is where addictions live, whether it's alcoholism, prescription medications, pornography, shopping, gambling. So these aren't just Oola blockers, they're Oola destroyers. And, it's rare to find a family that hasn't been affected by addiction in some way. And they kind of define this as an environment where there's no energy towards the goals. All the energy is spent feeding that addiction. So if you are affected by addiction, please do not be afraid to seek help. It is not a sign of weakness, and it will help everybody, not just you, but everybody around you. And more than likely, someone has been praying for you to get better and to seek treatment. So I do want to put that out there. As for me and my blocker of lack of focus, I'll tell you a little bit about me. My background is right now, I am a mom to 5 kids. My oldest is 12. He'll be 13 in August. And my youngest is 18 months. So 4 boys, 1 girl. And
I am married to a United States Marine, and we recently moved back from Okinawa, Japan. He was deployed a few times over there because he was with the MEU over there. So I also homeschooled at one point, and I worked at a church. So I find that it's very easy for me to personally get distracted. Whether it's just, the boys have their dirt bike or they're wrestling, they're in the band, they're playing their instruments. My little girl, she's, doing gymnastics, and she wants to have play dates, and she's getting ready to go into kindergarten. So all of this, I'm usually a flashlight, and I am really learning how to be a laser beam. And I've been listening to all of these Oola blockers, as we've been talking about them the past hour, and a lot of them just overlap so much, and I just really related to so many of the stories that we've shared. And for me, what's been interesting is I'm a very carefree person. Ever since I was a kid, I want to learn about everything. I'm curious about everything. And that, ironically, has held me back. And I think when COVID hit, it really, took everything that I was doing at that point. The boys were in school. I had the two little ones at home, and I had started a master's degree in religious education, actually, while going to church and volunteering there. And I was recovering from a broken leg. I know this sounds crazy as I'm saying it, but this is true life. So I took these courses, and I thought, I cannot write this much. If it was just read and take a test, I would have been fine. But that's not what it was. Oh, and trying to build an Oola coaching business on the side. See, a little bit too much. Yeah, I'm getting dizzy just thinking about it now. So I had to say, okay, what's my priority here? My priority is the kids. They're home. They got pulled out of school after moving overseas. Like, their lives have been, unfortunately, they've been a little bit chaotic between dad going in and out, saying bye to their friends again, coming here, meeting new friends, see you later again. So I really had to focus in and be there for them. So I dropped the courses for now. Well, I mean, I finished them, but I dropped the schooling part. That's not on my radar anymore. And then another thing that's helped me focus on what I need to do day to day is the Oola Big One goal. So for us, that means my husband's getting ready to retire in about 4 years. He wants to be in music ministry. So what we need to do is get our ducks in a row. He's going to retire. What are our finances going to look like? What am I going to be doing? Where are our kids going to be? So all of that is geared to his retirement right now, so that we can keep living in a way that just, we're happy, we're fulfilled, and we don't have to worry about finances or anything like that. So that's kind of my Oola goal, is to, match him in salary, essentially, so that we can keep going. And that was my choice. That's not his choice. He's like, just do what you want. So with that, I use the Oola planner to plan out my days, because now I realize when I'm working towards that goal, yes, Oola planner, you have to stay focused, and those goals have to match those action steps. The 3x5 note card, that has to, right now it's in my purse. Yes. That is gold. It's so simple, but it is gold. Because you have to think, you have to consciously and intentionally plan out your day. And that's not a bad thing. I was laughing earlier because Sheila talked about, our smartphones. As a mom of 5 kids, sometimes I'm like, okay, I'm going to pretend to go to the bathroom now and pull out this game. I'm going to stand there for 10 minutes as I check out. So I have to be careful that I don't do that too much. Mommy, go. So, and I also think that with my lack of focus, or focused on too many things, I also kind of started to think about how I think this was something to do as a way to not worry. If I had so much on my plate, I didn't have to worry about other things. Like, gosh, I don't know. Just things that I see a lot of people worry about. I don't have time to worry about that. I got this, this, and this. I don't know if anyone can relate to that or not. So that is basically my story. So, I'm at a point now where my priorities are in line. It's my family, it's my big one goal, and then the action steps to keep me focused, being a laser beam and not a flashlight, saying no to certain commitments, maybe we don't need to volunteer for all the things, because I'm also sure, why not? Let's do this, instead of fully thinking it through, like, how's this going to affect our family? What else? How much extra time is it going to take? So start saying no, start saying yes to the things that are going to help you to get to your goal and to the life that you want. So that is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Thank you, Jess. Yes, just like Dr. Troy says, sometimes you have to learn to just say no, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's certainly true. Saying yes to the right things and no to the wrong things, or the lesser things. First of all, I want to thank all of you coaches for joining us today. Your stories were amazing. They were real, they were authentic, and we certainly appreciate you sharing them with us. And then secondly, for any of you that are watching this live or you're watching it later, if you feel that any of these blockers are stopping you from living the life that you've always dreamed of, we would all urge you to take action. And the first thing you can do is order and read this book, Oola, Find Balance in an Unbalanced World. There's also other versions of Oola for Christians and Oola for Women. So they all talk about the blockers in them. And I would urge you to pick one of those up and definitely read it. And then thirdly, if you find some things in the book that you feel would help you, or if you've heard something today, leave a comment here on our Facebook Live, and you can direct it to any one of us, and we'll make sure that coach gets your comment, and we'll be glad to get back with you through a direct message or however you leave it for us to reach out to you. So thanks again for joining us today. Thanks to all the coaches. And we always say when we leave a meeting as coaches, we always do this. Everybody on 3. 1, 2, 3. Be grateful. Have faith. And go get your Oola life. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Bye. Bye. Thanks, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin.
Yes.